We have a very august panel of contributors tonight, experts in their field. But before we do that, can you put the next slide up there for me, Stephen? Inclucare's complex in many ways, but also the message and the aims are very simple. So there's some questions up there, and having interfaced with people, brands across the entire spectrum of hospitality over the last few years, it's always one of these that hooks the people I'm talking to. I've just been in Amsterdam over the weekend, staying in 5 of the top hotels in Amsterdam, speaking to the DOSs, the sales managers. Without exception, everyone buys into what Inclucare is about. And it could be any one of these things here which hooks them. So I'm going to put it to you. It doesn't matter where it comes in the journey. Any one of these can be the trigger. So I'm going to invite someone to, Chris, which one of these would you like me to?
What is inclusion?
Okay. Okay.
Is this the triple one?
There's a simple phrase that we use. Don't know where it came from, but it's great. Inclusion is very different to accessibility. Accessibility tends to default to the physical environment, and then by that a quick move to the wheelchair. Inclusion is about the experience of when guests are staying with you. So the phrase we use is accessibility is being invited to the party, but inclusion is being asked to dance, and that's very different things. So we embrace the narrative of inclusion. I decided that the concept of accessibility essentially had failed. I've been trying to push the industry on that narrative for the last 20 years. It failed. Inclusion is having a totally different level of traction. It's about the experience. Next question. Peggy.
Is there a market?
Is there a market? I'm often asked that question. How big's the market? My answer is, how big do we want it to be? The market doesn't exist right now. Let's get this straight. It doesn't exist right now. Which is why everybody says, oh, that's really good what you do. It's a niche market. It's only niche because our industry is keeping it this way. It's only niche because we're keeping it this way. From our perspective, what we know, it's the last major untapped market. Everything else has been done. Everything else has been done. This will dwarf anything that's been in the last 30 or 40 years. Next question.
Why luxury?
Why luxury? It has the shortest distance to travel. The mainstream industry, look, there are pockets of excellence. You look at Travelodge, you look at Premier Inn, you look at those brands. They've got the accessibility right. Don't touch the inclusion aspect of it, but they've got the accessibility right. You can find the information on their website. You can actually book it online. The rest of the industry, trust me, I've been pushing against this lack of understanding and awareness in the industry for 25 years. And I came to the conclusion during COVID, because it gave me the space to think, it's simply not structured to do it. It cannot do it. The mainstream industry cannot do it. And the reason why luxury can do it is because it's almost there. Attention to detail is everything. My God, you better get it right. It could be the temperature of the towels on the towel rail, but you better get it right. That's what inclusion's about. This is what we do as a travel organization. We find out what the guest requirements are, and we strive to meet them, actually ideally exceed them. But we better get it right. So there's a lot of parallels there already. Luxury built environment tends to come with space, tends to come with big bathrooms, tends to come with showers that don't have steps. It's not a conscious decision, it just does. So having failed, and I don't believe that anyone can embed best practice in the mainstream market, we have to do it somewhere. If we can do it in luxury, it will cascade down. It was never going to cascade up. And most of the luxury brands have the 4-star brands, have the new lifestyle brands. Let's get it right somewhere, because unless we establish it somewhere, it ain't ever going to happen. So we don't have a problem with luxury. It's got the shortest distance to travel. Yes?
Hi, Richard. Is Inclucare just for hotels?
No, it's not, because it's not just about the built environment. You can have the most accessible, physically accessible hotel in the world, and it's not inclusive. If you've got a hotel which got lots of accessible rooms in it, but the children, disabled children, are not welcome in the kids club, or if you have swimming pools and there's no way to access that as a non-ambulant or somebody with mobility limitations, that's about accessibility. Inclusion, like I said before, inclusion is the full human experience. It means everyone should have the opportunity to enjoy what everyone else is doing. How hotels think that it's acceptable to charge the same amount of money for everyone, but guess what? People can't get in the swimming pool. Really? And if you look at huge swathes of the earth, Caribbean, for example, there's not one hotel in the Caribbean that I know of that has a pool host. There's not one hotel in the Caribbean that you can book an accessible room online. A lot of why I say tonight will probably come as a surprise. It comes as a surprise when I talk to the owners, to the brands. It comes as a real surprise because it's simply not on the conscience of the industry. So the answer is no, it doesn't have to be. In fact, we're just about to Inclucare verify what is probably the largest DMC in the world, which is Destination Asia. We've been working with them on an amazing project over the last 18 months, where we've upskilled, educated, trained across 11 countries in Asia. Not only them, but also their suppliers. We're just about to Inclucare verify a specialist tour operator in Morocco. Sophie Morgan, who's supposed to be here this evening, but she's sadly very unwell, was just out there last week. She's got some amazing footage, which you're going to see, and amazing images, riding on a camel in the Sahara Desert, sleeping in a Bedouin tent in the Sahara Desert, riding on a camel with a saddle that's been specifically designed for paralyzed people. They are going to be Inclucare verified. We're also Inclucare verifying our host travel agency, 360 Private Travel, the independent travel advisors. It's the supply chain. This cannot reside with one particular discipline. So we can verify individuals, organizations, properties, anything, because it's about understanding what inclusion is. It's not about the width of doors. Yeah? Juliet, you pick one. Oh yeah, you can see that.
You thought she was ignoring you.
I can. I have lots of questions, but how about is there a cost?
Is there a cost? Yeah, there is. There's a cost if you don't do this. Here's my prediction. In 2 years' time, actually no, 18 months, your inclusion credentials better be as authentic as your sustainability credentials are now, because stakeholders are going to demand it, for sure. Once you realize we can all do this, this is not hard. It requires commitment, it requires leadership. The cost of not doing it means that we're ignoring 1 in 6 of the world's population. And actually, if only 3 people love that one disabled person, that's 70% of the world's population are impacted. Hello, Jack. Hello, Alison.
I was taking a picture of you.
That's what we call inclusion. Yeah, sorry, what was I talking about? What's that? Cost, yeah. The cost of ignoring this market is ridiculous. It just doesn't make sense. Disabled people stay longer. Why? Because it's so damn hard to leave home in the first place. They spend more money. Why? Because if it's peeing down with rain in London, they're going to eat and drink in your hotel. What's not to like? What's not to like? The global spending power of the community of people who are impacted by disabilities, $10 trillion a year. The industry really struggles to put luxury and disability in the same sentence. It doesn't understand it. It doesn't get it. It doesn't understand that only 17% of disabled people are born with a disability, which means that 83% of us pick it up along the way. Look, myself through trauma in a car accident. Alison, when a wayward horse box put her through the side of it when she was 17 and she's an amputee now. Chris Abe's here. Chris put himself in harm's way and was paralysed in the London Bridge terrorist attack as a police officer. But the main contributor towards disability is just aging. It's aging. You know, we get on. We can't do what we used to do. People give up. Why? Because the industry gives them no confidence to keep travelling. That's a market in itself. I call it keeping the world travelling well. We can give anyone another 10 years of travelling life. There's a cost to not doing this. And this is why stakeholders, once they realise, hang on a sec, why are we not doing this? Why are we ignoring 1 in 6 of the world's population? Why are we overtly welcoming dogs and not disabled people? And there are more luxury hotels in London, actually around the world, who overtly welcome dogs. Just go to the website if you want to check it out. How many of these behind the scenes luxury hotel documentaries have been on television? How many times have you ever seen a mention of inclusion, of accessibility, of that we service the needs of? There'll be great footage of the butler taking a dog for a walk in the Bentley across to Hyde Park. But what is there? So for the vast majority of disabled people, luxury hospitality doesn't exist. It's invisible. The industry keeps it invisible because it's bloody terrified of it. It doesn't know what to do. What Inclucare does makes visible what you have already and gives you a route map to get to the point where you have the confidence to make visible what you have. And as we'll see tonight, it's totally doable. If we can do it on a beautiful island in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and we can do it in a fabulous historic building here in London, we can do it anywhere. There is a cost. There is a cost. It's a 2-year agreement to start with, because this is not a band-aid. It's not a quick fix. This is culture, not compliance. So there is a cost. It's not fixed to every property, because if you've got 400 staff, that's very different if you've got 40 staff. If you've got 20 bedrooms, it's very different if you've got 150 bedrooms. So it's tailored. It's tailored. But we, amongst ourselves, would say most hotels investing in this will get their money back within 20 to 25 bed nights over 2 years. Not only that, but you will show intent to meet your obligations, which the vast majority of hotels in the world, by the way, do not meet under quality legislation. We have a Quality 2010 Act. It's been here since, 2010. We've audited 280 luxury hotels around the world. I'd say 275 do not meet their obligations under building codes. It's on very thin ice, our industry, and the only reason why it hasn't been taken to task is disabled people don't know what their rights are, but they will soon enough. Because what we're doing will make it visible. So yeah, there is a cost. There's a financial cost to actually sign up to Inclucare. We would estimate that any property in the world can get Inclucare verified within 3 months. We're not asking anyone to knock walls down, knock buildings down. If you recognise that you have an obligation to fill in terms of ratio of accessible rooms, or you want to make your restaurant, build it into your renovation plans. But my God, you better show some intent, because if you don't, that's when hotels are going to be in trouble, like they are in the USA, where the legislation is much more prescriptive. And why do brands still have this utterly preposterous and absurd and unfair policy that they will not confirm accessible rooms? So essentially what they're saying is, turn up, fly halfway around the world, if the room's available you can have it on the day. Really? And the vast majority of the major brands have that policy. When I speak to people at the top, they're not even aware they've got it. For us, for me, one of the greatest achievements for Inclucare, you ain't coming in. I don't care who you are. I don't care how fabulous your hotel is. You're not coming in unless you remove those ridiculously discriminatory policies. Because you can. It's just a decision making. That's all. And we've had success with some major brands doing that when they realize how utterly unacceptable it is. Next one. Mel.
Why Meta and GS why?
Why? Let me just have a drink before I say this. One word, leadership. This has to come from the top. This is not something that can be embedded in middle management. I had lunch with Victoria and Jason this year. Was it this year?
I can't remember. It was either November or February.
Before we
A year ago. A year ago.
1 year ago.
1 year ago.
before we even got to starters, they'd made a commitment that we're going to do this. And look the journey we've been on. It has to come from the top. Inclucare really just stated at that bar there, right there. It was probably the only one of the few events, Pierre, wasn't it, during the first COVID lockdown? We had a 360 partner event here.
In December.
Jane, as the CEO, had COVID. In fact, he attended on the big screen here. And then at the end of the day, I was talking to Pierre and Sholto, the GM, and Declan, the director of sales, and Courtney, the director of global luxury and entertainment at Hyatt. And that's where the decision was made that we want to be the world's leading brand in inclusive hospitality. It takes leadership. It's as simple as that. If it's not coming from the top, it ain't going to work. So we had leaders from two totally different destinations of properties lean in, stand up, and say we're going to do it, and they have. We've got any left?
What's next?
That's not one of the questions.
I'm sorry.
It's not on there.
Ventriloquist.
Inclucare, what next?
Okay. Look, there is no point in us just setting standards and verifying provision if we can't attract customers, because at the bottom line is that's what it's all about. Okay, so we recognise that. So once a property is Inclucare verified, then it drops into our distribution platforms called Inclutel. And Inclutel is essentially a mini website for the property, and we're able to put information on there that hotels probably can't on their own website, present it just as beautifully, in audio, in accessibility, websites that can be read by somebody who's blind. All the information there is totally relevant, totally the button pushes that we know disabled people need to have the confidence to travel. In fact, it was Courtney, who's the global director of Hyatt, said, I think this will become the world's #1 distribution platform for accessible, inclusive hotels, and it will. Why? Because it's the only damn thing anyone will trust. So that's the afters. That's the payback. Is you are now in a distribution arena that disabled people for the first time are going to look at that and go, well, in fact, Sholto, who's the GM here, came down before and said exactly the same thing. He said, I didn't know what we were to expect. He said, but that is amazing. So you get amazing once you're Inclucare verified, but you ain't coming in if you don't change your policies about not confirming accessible rooms. So distribution platform, and then we have a fulfillment team, which are right now 360 private travel, all expert luxury travel advisors, but who have been upskilled. We've developed independent travel advisor training. We're not teaching them how to do travel. They know that very well. We've given them the confidence to be able to go out and proactively reach out to a whole new market, which are basically people, they're existing customers who will know someone who's disabled. So that's the afters, if you like. Inclucare's just the gateway. It's the way in.
Is it just for hotels?
We've had that one.
Oh, you did? Sorry.
Can I just say I was in Amsterdam over the weekend with 50 colleagues. Christine was one of them. I got a very early flight out of Schiphol, and I was very nervous. And I saw a message on the WhatsApp group from Henry who's the concierge at 360, saying, "Has anybody seen Christine?" That was like 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm thinking, "Oh no, where is she?"
Sorry.
Anyway, she lives in the Netherlands, and she'd come across for these, and so thank you very much. Even though you're one question behind everyone.
I believe in this, Richard.
Yeah, I know you do. Okay, I think that's it. So I'm going to now. Juliet has kindly, literally sat in the hot seat this evening because Sophie, like I said, totally gutted she can't be here. Do we have any videos or pictures? Oh yeah, go on, make us feel jealous. Flick through the other ones because we. Oh, and she also learned to scuba dive there. Oh yeah, and we're Inclucare Very Fine Dive Butler International, who are the concierge diving centre on the island. Next. And we have 2 people from somebody in from Paddy this evening.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for coming. Yeah. This was Sophie last week in the Sahara Desert. She's paralysed from here, but that saddle has been designed for anybody to. You know what camels get up like? I mean, camels were designed by a committee. But that's designed so no one has to touch her. She can get up in the camel like that in that seat safely.
That's amazing.
I just want to say I sent this photograph because I was following her on Instagram to a lot of my friends and contacts in the travel industry in Morocco, and they were just all in awe and so inspired, to see that.
Yeah, it's just incredible.
So we can just spark change all the time just by sharing,
Absolutely.
just saying it's possible. It should be possible.
We're going to create, with Sophie, we're going to create amazingly beautiful content because I think this more than anything else is going to shift perceptions about what's possible.
If Sophie can't make it, I'm happy to.
We're not sure we have a camel. We're not sure we have a camel tall enough for you. Chris, how tall are you?
I'm 6'4".
6'4". Okay, we'll find a big camel.
2 humps.
Anyone who's been to Marrakesh, I think a lot of people have recently. This is in the Jemal Fana Square. Is that it? Okay. Right, I'm going to hand over to Juliet. So can we have a round of applause for Juliet?
I am here in place of Sophie, who's not well, and I've already learned so much this evening chatting to people. She's been such an inspiration to me, and I will just say that in 2020, when well, you all know what happened, but in 2020 I became the first ever sustainability editor for Condé Nast Traveller as a title, and one of the first things I really did was I got Sophie to write articles about accessible travel, and I don't think they'd ever done it before. I'm ashamed to say I don't think Condé Nast Traveller had covered accessibility. I mean, like, I may be wrong, and so obviously that's changed. We've already. I mean, it seems crazy.
Not crazy.
And so no. But we can change things, and even tonight it made me realise I've been reviewing hotels professionally for 25 years, and I've never asked particularly. I'm going to ask after chatting to Ali. I'm going to ask, can they get me a shower chair and things. I mean, just to see if it's available and just to see what their response is. It's my responsibility as a reviewer, and I think all of us need to ask more questions. It's the same thing. So thank you anyway. Thank you so much for having me be here. And I was thinking also, is it right as someone who is able-bodied, and actually we were thinking, if you think statistically, you said it's 1/6, but I understood it to be 1 in 5 people has a significant mental or physical impairment.
Well,
is that?
I mean, we're talking in the hundreds of millions in numbers.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
So that's this is representation. And how often do you see a panel with one person with a disability? Is just my thing.
Yeah.
And I think we need more of that. So thank you. And I think we all want to know your background, your story, what made you start doing this.
Look, Juliet, like most people, I mean, I've been in travel forever. I think of propeller planes doing package holidays when I started. So I didn't think about it like anyone else. But then, like a lot of people, your life changed in a split second, and I had an accident in the French Alps and I broke my neck, and I spent 6, 7 months in hospital, years just getting my head together, my body together. And in 1997, I looked at the travel industry and see what options were available for disabled people, and I was like, are you serious? Is this it? You went the whole deal with a charity or with one of the cottage industry specialists. And to be honest, nothing has changed. Actually, something has changed. All of the disability specialists have disappeared over COVID, so you don't even have that option. So I said, oh my God, I can do better than this. So I set up accessible travel, and I called it accessible travel to shift the narrative from disability travel to accessible travel. About 5 years ago, I wrote a piece, I think it was in Travel Weekly, which basically said accessible travel is dead. It's failed. It's gotten us nowhere. And so I I realised that the model of a disability specialist can't grow. Why? Because the vast majority of disabled people will never, under any circumstances, travel with a disability specialist. They don't want that label on the suitcase. They just want to travel. You know, they have dreams, ambitions. And when trauma comes along, Chris will know this, and Brian will know that exactly the same, because Brian was a teenager, I think, when you had your injury. I don't know how soon after that you contacted me.
It's nearly 6 years, maybe 5.5.
What, years ago?
No.
After your injury, yeah. So I kind of became Brian's travel organisation for about 10 years. Started off for the first trip was fairly tame in Benidorm. After that, oh my goodness.
Just come back.
But my approach then was, okay, Brian, where do you want to go? It's like, we'll deal with your disability afterwards. Where do you want to go? This young man has been, oh my goodness, where he hasn't been. He's probably the most well-travelled person with his level of spinal cord injury that I know. He's been everywhere the last 10 or 12 years. The best call I ever had was about 4 years ago, and he rang me up and said, Rich, I've got another trip for you. It's a honeymoon. Macy! Just a tame honeymoon, started in Fiji, then it went to Liku Liku, then it went to the Barrier Reef, then it went to Singapore, then it went to Langkawi. That was their honeymoon. Wow. Okay. Chris was different. I remember the first call you gave, and you said, look, I just want to go away, I want to sit by the pool, and I want to watch my kids in the pool. One of the best texts they ever got. Pinged, I looked up the phone, Chris was lying on a sunbed with a beer in his hand, thumbs up. Like you said when you came in, job done. A totally different approach. Our approach is, where do you want to go? What's your dreams? Don't give up on them. That's not the approach of the specialists. Their focus is on the disability. Ours isn't, it's on the destinations. So really for the last 20 years, that's what we've been doing. Inclucare came along during COVID when I realised we have to change something. And it became obvious that if we don't set the standards, if we don't set what is possible, it's never going to happen.
It's exciting. We're part of a big change. I mean, it can change. In Victoria, you're the first Inclucare verified resort.
Yes.
How? Well, we've had some idea of the moment.
Yes.
You decided to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, tell us.
And I think, you know, my husband and I have had experiences with people coming to our resort that we're currently in, and to a previous resort as well. My father ended his life in a wheelchair as well, so I had personal experience of this as well as that. And I think, you know, as Richard said, luxury has less further to go because it's all about looking after that person. It's about that human, and for us it was a no-brainer when Richard started talking about it. It was just like, okay, yeah, why not? We haven't done it before, why not do it? You know, and we'd just before we met, I had a girl and a child in a wheelchair with us, and with that family it was really interesting. And then last Christmas I had a really interesting experience as well. We had a family with a child who was highly autistic, and I remember on New Year's Eve day we close one part of our resort so that we can set up for that nighttime event. And the family came, and the boy just could not cope with the fact that we'd closed his normal way to go to breakfast. And that was such a learning experience of, you know, if you have this, you can't upset their routine. So, you know, all these things contributed to it. And then obviously when we met Richard, it was like, oh, okay, no brainer, let's go.
So it's interesting, you're saying a lot of the challenges or the barriers are people just having a can't do attitude, and they just need to be more flexible.
It's
and
just fear that comes from lack of understanding and awareness. And the leadership thing comes in where the leadership has to decide we have a responsibility for everyone who works for us to understand this. Look, inclusion is culture. It's not.
It's a cult.
Compliance.
We all joined the cult.
I'm sorry, but anybody who meets me becomes an inclusion.
No, it is actually.
An inclusion anorak. It means you never look at the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the key elements of Inclucare is that one of the reasons why it's never taken hold in the industry, it sits on somebody's desk. That someone is responsible for it. That ain't working. If something lands on their desk, there's already a problem. Inclusion happens in real time, and it happens with your people, your staff.
Absolutely.
I experienced it myself when I went to Amilla the first morning. My hands don't work. Buffets are a nightmare for me. Anybody who knows me would run a mile when I go near a buffet, because there's going to be food everywhere. I can't use the tongs, I can't pick up hot plates, I can't do both at the same time. I was there for 10 seconds. A member of the F&B staff came up and said, "Excuse me, Mr. Thompson, can I be of assistance?" And I just went, "Actually, you know what? Yeah, you can." I could just as easily said, "No, it's okay." Either way, that's the strategy for having confidence that you're never going to get it wrong. Ask the expert every single time. Ask the expert. So it has to involve everyone. So for me, the most rewarding has been going out to Miller. I mean, it was a bit of a difficult decision.
Chris, sorry about that.
But we had back-to-back sessions for about a week. Everyone came in, everyone left buzzing. It's like, we're so excited about disabled people coming in.
That's my experience of every conversation with hotels. Once you get everyone involved in the conversation, they get excited.
Yeah.
It's inclusion, literally, in that one. It's the same, my background is sustainability, but that's part of the conversation. It's about, people don't realise, they think sustainability is just solar panels, but obviously it's
So much more.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
And I think that we all have a responsibility. I don't know who here, all of us, we know sustainability is suddenly fashionable and it's top of the agenda, and it needs to be up there with it. It's the same, inclusion. It's simply making sure everyone has the right to have the same.
But what we're seeing in the Maldives, which is inevitable, is the cascading effect that it's had beyond your shores.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely, and beyond our island, we've had, as soon as we announced, we had every other resort, the Maldives went, "Oh, we want a piece of that action," but we also had the government come in, so the tourism minister has jumped on it, and he's definitely, working on it, but more importantly, there's the Minister of Gender and Family, for which disability comes under. She's come to the resort and she's already campaigning to get the legislation changed. We're going to be the model resort in the Maldives for every other resort to look at. There was a symposium last week in the Maldives to talk about these things, and one of our staff was there, and then there's another one on the 3rd. So she's putting the suggestion to the president about what can we do, how can we make this better for people to come. So it's
also,
huge.
I mean, one of the biggest barriers is how do you get from Mali Airport to the beautiful Sandy Islands.
Yeah, and Manta Airways, who's our seaplane and domestic flight provider, has been amazing. They're like, okay, what do we need to do? Let's just get on it. And Sophie, when she came, they were like, oh, we can get her on the seaplane. Let's take one seat out of the seaplane, make it easier for her to get on it. They tried to beach the seaplane for her departure, but it was a bit rough that day. But it's just finding ways of doing things differently
and making
saying yes.
Noise, I guess, also about it, and showing. I mean, Pierre, you're great. Scotland Yard City Hotel, very different situation. It's interesting. What are the barriers? What were the barriers for it? Because it's an old building.
Yes, I mean, first of all, it's a very old building. We've been very lucky that everything has been fully renovated before we came on board, with lots of accessible bedrooms, etc. But I think the first barrier was in regards to the group itself. I mean, we are managed by Hyatt. It's an international American-based company, and as Richard said, in the US, it's very regulated in regards to, you have a separate room categories that guarantee you to have the room type directly when you check in, but it's not in Europe. And
It's only 5%. We're mandated to have 5%. There can be any room category.
Yes.
5% of a hotel.
Well,
inventory
Ed
needs
should
to
be able to answer
accessible.
this better than any of us, actually.
Well, okay.
and I think it is 5, yeah, right?
5%
Yeah.
is standard.
And I think what's important to remember in this conversation, certainly when I'm running hotels, is what have they done that's the bare minimum, that's mandated, and where have they gone above and beyond? And that's obviously where the design also comes in. And
Yeah, and actually the design has been very well done for our property. I mean, from an accessible point of view, bedrooms to a normal bedroom, the features are exactly the same. The design is exactly the same. You can't barely see it from your own eyes, and it's depending of what are your needs inside the rooms that we adjust, and you can see all the features that match that. And we have 11 accessible bedrooms at the hotel, 2 different categories, because we do believe that people can choose in which room types they want to stay in, and you don't need to go into different room categories and avoiding all those accessibility part of it.
I know that a few years ago, I remember that we wanted to make sustainability sexy, and it's the same thing with accessibility.
Oh my God, yeah.
You know, that's what we're doing, is making it romantic, these beautiful images, and then you say, why luxury? It's another way, visually. I mean, we look at the postcard perfect image of a Maldivian hotel, but that sand looks like a postcard to me, but that's a challenge for different people. How did you?
Absolutely, and I mean, it's still, we're not going to say that anyone could come in any wheelchair and you can cruise around it, or you know, it's not about that. It's about making sure that there's enough help for people. We have a sand wheelchair, we have a swimming wheelchair, so those things are kind of the hardware. But it's also, you know, you've got we call them khatibs, but a butler service, and it's about that person going, oh yeah, I can help you down, or help you with the, you know, to get where you need to go. Or
What did you
know,
call them? The butlers?
Khatib. Khatib
Khatib
is the Devehi word,
Yeah.
and it kind of roughly translates to island chief kind of thing. So yeah, and so, you know, yes, there's sand, but it's about saying, well, how do you can get around to this part, but you might not be able to get to this part, and giving the information to the expert to make that decision as well.
For you, obviously, you're really helping with the design, and it's so often overlooked when it comes, from what I understand, actually, from speaking to Robin Shepherd a lot.
It is, and I so love that phrase, making accessibility sexy. You know, our strapline at Motion Spot has been beautifully accessible since we set up 10 years ago. And it's interesting to hear Richard and Victoria's personal stories as to how they got into this. And perhaps if I can just share mine, because it's so connected to that point around well-designed accessibility. And I set Motion Spot up 10 years ago now after the experience of our co-founder, an old school friend of mine, James Taylor, who experienced a spinal cord injury in a diving accident while on holiday in Portugal. He spent 8 months in Stoke Mandeville Hospital and then returned to his flat in Battersea, to a home that was a beautiful home, but overnight, as an independent wheelchair user, it turned into something that resembled more like a hospital. And I had dinner with him in 2011, and he said, every morning I wake up and I'm reminded of my condition because the products around me. And I'm a big believer that if you get the environment right for people, you can really positively impact cognitive and physical health. So that's where Motion Spot started 10 years ago now, and we've been designing really beautiful, inclusive spaces, whether that be hotels or any form of accommodation, housing, later living, as well as workplaces, to make them accessible, but without compromising on staff.
And what would you say are the aspects of your hotels that make them particularly appealing to be, well, being more inclusive?
Well, I mean, first of all, I would say the team makes the difference, because as Richard says, and everyone is saying, like, as the experts, it is not in our common language to say that. And thanks to Richard and all the trainings, I think the team is making everything possible at the property, no matter your accessibility needs, your inclusion needs, etc. It's through them that your stay is going to be as enjoyable as a normal stay.
And also, I mean, preference questionnaires are kind of standard now. You know, the hotels want to know what the guests want, and it could be literally, how do you take your G&T or whatever else. And I know you've developed a dedicated preference form specifically for
Correct. Yes, so we ask people, and we do the normal preference form, and ask people if they would like the inclusion preference form to be sent to them. So that's step 2. Exactly.
And I don't know if you noticed, well, you would have noticed if you came in, if you were non-ambulant, but amazing piece of engineering, the staircase coming in, how it transformed into
I
platform.
saw Sophie coming in.
I dare to think how much that cost, Pierre. Probably quite a lot of money. That was the solution. You know, this is probably a listed building, is it?
It is, yeah, a listed building, but to make it accessible, we needed to have a lift for that, but we wanted to be as sexy as possible.
So you
invested
in a sexy video,
Yeah.
and that can go out to guests before they arrive, so they know.
And so they feel, and it's also how they feel, I imagine, because it must be quite intimidating. You mentioned a lot of people had not been on holidays or trips
Absolutely. Yeah.
before,
Exactly.
because they didn't.
It will stop people from travelling rather than, you know,
Completely.
Yeah. So
But it's, I mean, on our side at Great Scotland, we're working on the entire pre-arrival. So yes, we are sending the preference form, as you are saying, but we're also working on, okay, this is how you're going to get into the hotel. Don't be surprised, there will be a lift, there will be someone assisting you with the lift, but don't be stopped at the front of the hotel and be like, oh, we have stairs.
How do I get in?
Yeah.
This is like big drama which is happening. So we're working on that to make your journey to the hotel and your arrival as smooth as possible.
Disabled people expect there to be problems. It's a given. Why? Because they've had so much crap told to them before they arrive. So, and it's all about first impressions. What we don't want is a guest arrive in this beautiful hotel and the first thing is like, oh, here we go again. Are we going through the tradesman's entrance? Which is why Pierre produced this beautiful video, and that can be sent to the clients before they arrive. It's all about, we don't mind surprises, but let's make them all good surprises.
And let's make the experience the same for everybody.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
mentioned it earlier, an accessible room shouldn't look any different
Exactly.
to
I've
a
started taking
non-accessible.
pictures of the hotel rooms or bathrooms where I've noticed that they're really sexy, but I've noticed they've got all the fittings. Lock Hotels is one route.
If you look at
yeah.
Ed's website, you'll see some stunningly beautiful bathrooms on there that you'd want in your house. It doesn't have to look like a clinical thing. And the other thing about design is we are now regularly being asked, you know, when we're engaged with the hotels, properties, brands, collections, whatever else, we're now being asked, when they think about it, it's like, wouldn't this be best done at the drawing board stage? 100%. Because Ed, it's a damn sight more difficult to adjust, isn't it? And probably more expensive.
Yeah, we did a case study a couple of months ago with a client who worked out for every £1 they spent on accessibility, saved them £100 on expensive retrofits.
Can I have that written down, please? That's going an hour.
It's
Every
just,
pound.
and
That's
to
amazing
to the
quote.
question about does it cost any more, if it's thought about early enough, it really doesn't have to. This is nominal, this is kind of rounding errors in the grand scheme of a development cost. It just
So this
needs
is
to be
why I
thought about.
approached Ed, well, through Sophie, who knows everyone. We want to offer this to new, to brands, to new builds, to
As a consultancy, you mean?
absolutely.
Yeah, and
I
do
don't
you
know
open
how to do
source
that, but this man and his team do. So
Do you open source some of what you're doing? You must do, presumably, to inspire others. Like, even
Absolutely,
if you
and
can't-
we'll work in partnership with whoever's interested in this space, and that's why I was so keen to support tonight, because I think, Richard, what you and the team are doing is
well, we all know how many new builds are on the drawing board. You must know how
Oh,
many.
yeah,
I mean, there are a lot.
Property developers.
Schedule, yeah. I mean, let's, like Ed said, let's do it right first of all, and you don't have to think about it. Design, talk
I
about
was going to say
universal
universal,
design.
that was my
What's
that was
universal?
original.
Sorry, you've got that.
Yeah, no, that's what I was going to say. So explain to everyone. We can all be, our cult can talk about universal design. We all go forth.
Yeah,
Spread
I
the
mean,
word.
universal design, quite simply, is ensuring that you're designing a really beautiful space that works for everybody. Yeah, good example, we finished a small bed and breakfast down in Surrey a couple of years ago and designed these 2 beautiful bedrooms and bathrooms that were accessible, and then went back and said, actually, what are your booking rates on this? And they said they're the most booked and popular rooms in the hotel, not only for disabled people, but we find that families want to book them if there are no disabled people staying in the hotel, because they have interconnecting doors and I want to be close to the children, or if I've got lots of luggage or a pushchair, why wouldn't I want to stay in an accessible room with greater circulation space? We have kind of business people wanting to book the rooms because they like the big open plan wet rooms. You know, these are just principles that are good for everybody. And what we're talking about in this room is we're starting a movement here that, yes, is focusing on 1/5 of the population, but actually hopefully we will all get to that stage if we age, you know, as we all, you know, will do. But also this is just good design for everybody.
Yes, I remember hearing about neurodegenerative adaptation to the rooms and design, which I've never heard of before, but more and more people are obviously living longer and showing. Can you speak to a bit about that, which some people might not know about?
Yeah, so I mean, when it comes to design, so often the conversation starts on, you know, the client says, oh, well, what can I do for wheelchair access? And it's like, we can help you with wheelchair access, but only 8% of disabled people are wheelchair users. How can we help you design for the 8% and the 92% who may have another physical, cognitive or sensory need, including neurodiversity? So, you know, from a cognitive point of view or neurodiversity perspective, thinking about things like lighting is really important, acoustics in the space is really important, the patterns that you use in the built environment. You know, we want to create environments that stimulate but don't overstimulate. And also creating choice. You know, what works for one person doesn't work for everyone. So, you know, if we're going to design a wacky, you know, room pattern with amazing kind of wallpaper, let's say what that room has, but let's design a slightly subtler, not a boring room, but let's use a bit of kind of design creativity to think about how that room may respond differently for someone who has early onset dementia or autism or ADHD.
Creativity, that's a word that we often need to hear more, obviously, in all design and adaptation. In terms of verification, because this is such a big step, you're the first verified resort, you're the first verified hotel, that's right, isn't it? Yeah. What do hotels need to think about if they want to be verified? What are the biggest considerations?
It's not about, what we're not verifying is complying with regulations, because there'll be very few hotels in the world would ever be. This is not about, look, we have to accept there will never be a barrier-free environment. That's really what it's about. It's about a commitment to care. It's about a commitment to welcome. And it's about a commitment to total guest inclusion. However you're going to achieve that. There are certain criteria you need to meet. One is that there needs to be a statement from the leadership. We are going to do this. Because if it doesn't come, then the rest of the workforce won't buy into it. We developed an inclusion hospitality audit. That's not the same as an access audit. But we've done access auditing in the past. We understand this looks at the full provision, including, and this is why the industry. We've got hundreds of audits from hotels who've said to us in answer to questions, do you deliver disability awareness training to your staff? No. Do you have personal emergency evacuation plans for your guests? No. I mean, if the people the directors knew what we were being told. There are iconic hotels in the world. In answer to the question, how many accessible hotels do you have? None. We've gone back and said, no, we think you've made an error here. No, we don't have any accessible rooms. So we look at the entire provision. So we do look at the built environment. Images are very important. It's an app. You literally walk you around the resort. It asks all the questions. Okay, you get to this. Can you please take a photograph of this? But we talk a lot about what's the level of awareness of staff at the moment. How do guests communicate with you? Because if they can't see what you have to sell, how are they ever going to come? They're not going to come.
Do you publish all these questions online so where we can access it, so we know questions to ask?
No, the Inclusion Hospitality Audit is a tool.
But are there questions? I mean, is there a resource that we can all go to if we are? Well, I'm reviewing a hotel, or any of us as suppliers.
You know what? Band-aids don't work. Picking one aspect of all this doesn't work. For us, you either embrace and invest in Inclucare, or we're not interested. Nothing else will work. You can't just say, oh, let's get the accessible rooms right. That's never worked. You can't say, oh, let's just disability.
But if people are asking, I just mean generally.
No.
Like, if I get a sense of it, and they're quite good, and then I can say they can apply for Inclucare. But I mean, what are the questions we need to ask to get a sense if they're on the,
you have to ask, why don't you make visible what you have already? And that says everything. And if they can't answer that, you know it's not in the conscience, either of the brand or the hotel. Ask them, do you have any accessible rooms? If they say yes, ask them then, why can't I see them on your website? Why can't guests book online? If I call your central reservations, which is what we do all the time, they have no information whatsoever.
Yeah.
So why do you keep it hidden? That's the question. Why do you keep it hidden? They can't answer that question.
So you obviously are not hiding it, and you're proudly showing a lot more on the website. And what's been the response of people? They must be really loving. I mean, I've certainly seen a lot of it. I mean, the images that we see, as you say, images are so key.
Yeah.
Images are so important.
So when we announced what we were doing, and when Sophie came, we had a lot of response. We had a lot of people reaching out to us and saying, A, thank you for doing this. B, and I can remember this gentleman messaged me saying, okay, I've seen what you're doing, and it's been my dream of coming to the Maldives forever, and I never thought I could come. So it's that kind of response that we've been having, and again from the government level, and that's really important for us because there's 2,000 people with disabilities in the Maldives that will never get a job. So now we're thinking, well, let's take this into the staff area and let's make sure that we can employ team members with disabilities into the resort. So all of those things from a reaction point of view have been incredible.
Yeah. Well, same for us. I mean, since we've been talking to Richard back in 2020, I guess, we saw so many positive aspects of that. Soon as we launched our dedicated room categories, we had some great returns. We've been nominated for the Blue Badge Awards and won the Best Luxury Hotel, which was thanks to all the efforts that we put it ahead with Richard to showcasing what we have available, because what he said is we had the product, we're just not showcasing it, and sharing enough information with our teams, because as we are part of Hyatt, we do have a global central reservations system which is helping us with all the reservation, but without those categories they couldn't find information that was relevant to the product itself.
I think you got one particularly nice booking from somebody.
Yes, and we had an amazing booking, someone that stayed for 75 nights at the hotel.
3 rooms.
And as Richard initially said, it is a proper market, because you would probably come with some supports, some assistance around you, depending of your accessibility needs, etc. And that booking came in there, 3 bedrooms in total for 75 nights.
Amazing. So we all need to shout about it. So it's being more visible. It's making it more visible.
Dubai said, build it and they will come. We say, make it visible and they will come. It's not a difficult equation. Trust me. Disabled people don't think luxury hospitality exists. Why would they? It's not there. 95% of hotels in London and around the world do not make visible what they have. They're not going to come looking for it. Disabled people gave up on that a long time ago. So Amilla's website is packed with information, but right now no one's going to come looking for it. This is where the Inclucare platform will come in, because we'll put this in a space where it can be found.
So they come to you obviously as the resource.
Well, they have the option. We're servicing those hotel inquiries with a concierge team of basically 360 private travel, as you know.
Brilliant.
Bloody good at what they do. With the support of ourselves, Alison who heads up our travel side, we're unique, so we can service the inquiries, because we know that the disabled person finds Amilla on Inclucare, they're going to want everything. They're going to want the flights, the special assistance, they're going to want us to fix everything. Mobility equipment, travel insurance, the lot. So what we've created is a complete, I'm going to get shouted at by my team because they don't like this word, but it's an ecosystem. I know, but I couldn't. I've resisted using it for about 3 months. So look, we make visible what's there. We make it attractive. We're going to get inquiries to say to people, we can then fulfill that with people who know what they're doing. It's the complete chain, really. And Band-aids don't work. This is what I mean. We're not in. We get people come and say, "Well, just tell us what we need to do with the rooms." I'm sorry, we're not going to do it. Can you just train our people? No, sorry, you're not going to do it. There's no context. Inclucare creates a context. That's why it'll work. That's why it works.
I'm sure people have questions, lots of questions, more that, I mean, I have got them, but I'm thinking probably questions are coming up and I want to ask. Must do.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Chris.
When you speak to the people at the top,
Yeah.
when you ask a question about why they're not showing their rooms, why
Yeah.
they're not showing the resort,
Yeah.
and they're hiding it, do you feel there's a little bit of embarrassment there as well?
There's quite often shock. The higher I go within the organisations, the more defensive they are at first. Give me 30 seconds, I'll demolish that defence, and quite often it's like they cave in, because if I start talking about accessibility, it's really easy to tick that box. If I say, how do you feel about disabled children coming to stay in your hotel, and they have to watch their brother and sister go off to kids club, and you're excluding them, how do you feel about that? That's a very different question. They can't move on that, and in that moment everything changes. So they don't know what's happening within their brands, to be honest, Chris. They don't. But it doesn't take long for them to get engaged. But then there's still a journey to go from there. And it's much easier for us to work with independent properties where we don't have chains of, and big corporate brand policies and everything else. So we have to get to a point, and the more properties that come on board with us, where they're coming to us. We can't sell this. Look, you either get it or you don't. But at the top of brands, it's simply not in the conscience of the industry. And when you ask questions of why do you think it's reasonable that you will confirm accessible rooms in America, but the same brand, you are the same brand, but you won't do it anywhere else in the world, because the answer is because we have to. Otherwise, we wouldn't bother. That's the answer. They can't give it. Embarrassed for sure. Shocked. I remember having an afternoon tea with a director of sales for one of the most iconic hotels in Monaco. And within 30 seconds of me talking to her, I thought she was going to face plant the cakes on the afternoon tea. It hit her like a train. She lives in the hotel. For the first time in all 11 years, she'd had to think that they weren't perfect at everything. And she was like, she had her head in her hands. She went, oh my God. I mean, what I hear more often than anything is, why haven't we thought about this before? We think we're perfect, and we are doing nothing. So it comes as a real shock.
How can we spark more aha moments like that?
Just spend a couple of days with me, Julia.
But I wondered how all of us there's different people. Who here's media? How many people are media? So we've got journalists. So what can we do to help? And who here travel agents? We've got travel agents. What are the things we can do to spark these moments in leadership and in hotels to think, I hadn't thought of that, I need to change this, I need to speak to it.
Sally, you got your hand up?
So I'm Sally, I'm from 360, and I actually introduced Richard to 360. And Claire and I worked with him for 8 years before it travel counsellors. And we used to listen to Richard banging on about accessible travel and all the rest of it. And do you know what? When it resonated with me, and Claire can speak for herself, but when it resonated with me was my husband's here tonight, and our beautiful nephew was playing rugby, and there was a collapsed spiral, and he broke his neck, and he was paralysed, and he was in Salisbury Hospital for a long time. Another good girlfriend of mine, who I met through my son at school, her son is severely autistic. And I have to say, I was one of those people that was oblivious, I suppose, until my friend Helen taught me all about autism. And her son now is 21 or so. And I embraced that and wanted to know what made him tick. I think that what you just said, and how you can sit here and debate as much as you want, but I believed in Richard. I believe personally, I think all of us know somebody with mental health, with autism, maybe a disability. I also introduced Sophie. Rob went to school with Sophie's father. For me, having met Richard, something struck a chord, and I think he just said, you either get it or you don't. And it's as simple as that. And certainly Claire and I, would I think all the 360 people here who get it are supportive. But I don't think you can ask the question, will a hotel get it or won't they? The point is, if you're passionate about it, and if you're a travel agent, I know that I'm not an expert in booking a top-end trip for somebody with an accessible need, but I know I've got somebody that can do it for me. But how you can help, how the media can help, is just by everybody talking to somebody that they know to say, I know a company that can help you. And that's as simple as that. And then it's like a referral effect, and it will snowball and snowball. So, I'm here personally tonight as Claire is, because 8 years ago we met at Travel Counsellors and he was banging on about this. And nobody could listen to it.
I was joking, by the way, when I said
what Richard has now is a platform. And what's happening already is the more people we introduce, we've just introduced him to, and he's got a Zoom meeting to I think on Wednesday, with a friend of ours called Pete Reed, who was if those of you who know the rower, he was an Olympic rower, 3 gold medals, blah, 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 he's gorgeous, he's in the military. That's why I introduced him. No, I think, no, it's marriage, but I was going to say, so with that, I'm very passionate, as you can see, but, Claire and I totally believe in him. And you can debate this as long as you like, but all it's about is saying, I know a company that can help you.
So we steer them, definitely. Yeah. That's it. It's wonderful.
It's all about the audience. I think tonight has the potential to change the world. I mean change the world, the travel landscape for disabled people across the globe. But I've spoken to big audiences before. I remember the United Nations invited me to speak at a World Summit about 4 years ago, and I said, you really don't want me to get on that stage. The audience is not going to like what I want to say. They said, submit a paper and we'll decide. And so I submitted it, and they said, no, we want you to speak. So I got up in front of 3,000 people in Brussels, and I said, guys, you're doing it all wrong. But I knew the people listened to that. This is a self-selecting audience. They just talk to themselves. I said, look, if you don't want to change things, come back in 2 years' time and talk to yourselves again, because this is going nowhere. This has to come from you, respected mainstream, particularly the luxury arena, you saying it. Like Sally said, I've been banging on for this for bloody years. Banging on. Tonight I don't feel like I'm banging anymore. Tonight I feel I've got an audience. And you guys have it in you're more powerful now than I am, for sure. Because you can reach people I can't reach. I've got a great team here now with Inclucare. But it would take us forever to go around. You can reach people in a way we can't. In numbers, in credibility, the fact it's coming from you, man, that gives us so much credibility. It's unbelievable. So I think this is like the blue touch paper tonight, really. So thank you.
Does anyone else have a question? You do, yeah.
Question for Victoria here. I handle global PR for small luxury hotels in the world, and obviously Amilla is one of our wonderful hotels in the portfolio, and we've had great discussions similarly with Richard. And can you talk me through how long the process has taken from the beginning to being verified?
It's a very, very long process. Talking about a big organization like Hyatt, it's a very long process to go through the different departments to get approval, to get a specific room type approved. We started our conversation back in 2020.
But there were months and months and months where literally there'd be just me and Pierre in this hotel. It was a very difficult time to get anything done, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So we had that.
And the fact of having experts again involved help us in terms of organization here at West Colonial to test some environment, and now those environments are getting approved for way more hotels. So, as Richard said, there is a lady called Courtney, which is the global director of sales for Hyatt, which is representing all luxury hotels for the brands, which is now on board, and she is helping to develop the entire sharing of the product that we have available in lots of our hotels worldwide. But it's a very long process, and it's a process that I would say that will never end, because the number of accessibility needs will probably never end. And the property has been built for a certain type of, but a hotel never stops in terms of evolvement. We're doing some work on a day-to-day basis, if it's like a painting purposes or changing of carpet, etc. And therefore, as soon as we reach out to the accessible bedrooms, how can we make them a little bit better? How can we tweak a little bit to, for example, remove a solid base, bed base, because in that case we cannot reach a certain audience in regards to people which are coming with disability, etc. So it's a whole process.
I think it never stops.
End.
You know, I mean, we think that most properties, once they engage, we can get them to Inclucare verified status within 3 months, because it doesn't require knocking anything to bits. This is about educating everybody, training everybody, making sure you have provision for that you can alert deaf guests, making sure you have induction loops at the key communication points in the hotel, making sure that you can provide information in alternative format, that your websites are accessible, and if they're not, then that's fine, because ours will be for you. Simple things like somebody struggling to read the menu, your staff are aware of that, and they will offer to read it. It's not all about heavy lifting. We think a totally engaged property, 3 months.
It took us almost no time, really. I mean, we spoke to Richard a year ago, and then we committed in June, and then we're verified now. So, I mean, it was a very quick process for us.
It was very difficult. I mean, because Amilla never stopped, but this was
we closed for more or less 9 months in total. So automatically, when we started the conversation, it was pre-lockdown. We still went through the entire conversation during lockdown, and then we reopened with a brand new project. But we haven't invested anything. The product was here; it was just hidden, and the staff was not educating on how to interact, how to address to people with disability, to understand what they want and how we can make their life way easier.
You're never going to put inclusion back in the box once it's out. Once people have an inclusive mentality, everything becomes possible. It's never going to stop. But we would not want we wouldn't want to take more than that length of time to get it verified. It's enough, because basically what you're doing is you're laying down the foundations to become have an inclusive culture.
And just one other question, do you continue to monitor?
Yeah, we reordered.
After
12 months. Actually, it's ongoing, because we're communicating now. Both Pierre and Victoria has been sending us the preference form, so we look at it and suggest we do this and do this. So it's an ongoing engagement. We don't tick a box and bye-bye. No, we'd like to think it's going to become like Michelin, that you can lose the verification. This has to be authentic. We're not playing at this.
And it will be credibility
totally
into the certification.
That's really interesting to hear that, because I don't know if you know, there are like 800 certifications just in sustainability, just in the travel sector.
Yeah.
So to know that you're just the one trustworthy, that's the word you started with, is trust.
Yeah.
Is trust.
And I don't think anybody would be able to replicate what we're doing.
No.
They don't get it. And they certainly won't be able to do all the fulfillment, the distribution, and everything else. Inclucare is just one element of the ecosystem.
I'm fine with it.
Listen, I think
thank you so
I don't know
much.
about you, but I need another glass of champagne. Well, I need a glass of champagne.
Celebrate. It's amazing.
But if you want to wrap it all up,
Yeah,
Julia,
no, that's
thank
great.
you so much.
I mean, we all know this is incredible, but we all know it does have to change.
Yeah.
And it needs to be as prominent as every other topic in travel. And that I think we just need to talk more loudly, and those images we saw of Sophie are incredible. Share it. So it's great. Thank you.